There I was, standing barefoot on the cold marble floor of their Hamptons estate, still holding the coffee mug Sarah had bought me for our third anniversary, world's okayest husband, when her father cleared his throat and slid the check across the glass table like he was paying a parking ticket. $5 million, cash, no strings except one. Sign the divorce papers, walk away, and never speak her name again. Sarah sat beside her fiancé. Tall, tanned, the kind of guy who looks good in yacht photos, her hands folded protectively over the swell of her belly. 8 months pregnant with twins she swore weren't mine. I didn't flinch, didn't shout. I just looked at the number until my eyes burned, then met her gaze. She wouldn't hold it. Her mother hovered behind her like a guard dog, lips pursed, already mentally redecorating the nursery without me in any of the pictures. Her brother leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, smirking the same smirk he'd worn since the day Sarah introduced me as the coder guy from Ohio. My name is Nathan Reese. I grew up in a Rust Belt town where the biggest dream was keeping the factory job your dad had. I got out on scholarships, built software that actually mattered, sold my first company at 29 for 8 figures, enough to feel rich until I met the Hargroves. Then it felt like pocket lint. Sarah was 25 when we met at a charity tech panel. She laughed at my jokes, touched my arm when she spoke, told me I was different from the trust fund boys she'd grown up around. I believed her, because I wanted to. For 8 years, I believed her. They never did. Every holiday, I was the polite outsider. At her sister's wedding, I stood in the back row during family photos because there wasn't room up front. Her father once introduced me at a boardroom dinner as Sarah's little project. Her mother asked every single Christmas if I'd finally found a real career beyond tinkering with computers. Sarah always squeezed my hand under the table and whispered later that they didn't mean it, that they'd come around. I let those whispers keep me warm for years. The real fracture started quietly, small things at first. She stopped wearing her wedding band when she went to client dinners. She'd come home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. Then one Tuesday, I walked into our Tribeca loft 6 hours early from a canceled flight and found her legs wrapped around the senior partner at her law firm. He didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed, just pulled the sheet up like I had interrupted a business call. Sarah sat up, hair wild, eyes glassy. "The babies aren't yours, Nathan. I'm sorry. It just happened." She said it like she was explaining a delayed flight. I stood there, keys still in my hand, feeling the air leave the room. She told me the timeline didn't match, said she'd known for months but waited until the pregnancy was safe to tell me. Her family already knew. They'd been planning this exit for weeks. The check, the papers, the new man waiting in the wings, it was all arranged. They wanted me gone before the twins arrived so the Hargrove name wouldn't be tainted by a child raised by someone like me. I felt my knees buckle, but I didn't fall. Something inside me folded up like a letter and slid into a drawer I didn't know I had. Not rage, not heartbreak, just stillness. I looked at the 3 of them, Sarah, her father, the new guy, and realized they'd rehearsed this moment. They expected tears, yelling, begging. They expected me to be small again. I wasn't. I told them I'd consider the offer, left the check on the table, drove home alone. That night, I didn't drink, didn't smash anything. I opened my laptop, logged into the encrypted folder I'd kept since the early days of our marriage, just in case, and pulled up the insurance portal. Sarah had never changed the access after we added her to my plan. I downloaded every prenatal blood draw from the last 6 months. Then I called a friend from my startup days who now ran a boutique genetics lab in Boston. No questions asked. 48 hours later, the report landed in my inbox. 99.9998% probability match. The twins were mine. She'd lied to everyone, most of all to her own family, to force me out and clear the runway for her upgrade.
I didn't tell a soul. 3 days later, I walked back into that same living room. Sarah looked hopeful, like maybe I'd come to fight for her. Her father looked impatient. I laid the signed divorce papers on the table. Clean, no contest, no alimony demands. I took the check, shook his hand, looked at Sarah and said very quietly, "Congratulations on the family you always wanted." Then I left. I was gone before the ink dried. New passport, new accounts, one-way ticket to Lisbon. I bought a whitewashed house on the Algarve coast with a view of nothing but ocean and sky. Transferred most of the $5 million into index funds in a blind trust. The rest went to a small scholarship program back in Ohio for kids whose parents never believed they'd amount to anything. I kept enough to live simply. Coffee on the terrace, walks on the cliffs, nights writing code for fun again. For the first time in years, I slept without waking up to the feeling that I owed someone an apology for existing. Meanwhile, back in New York, the wedding train left the station at full speed. Vineyard in the Hudson Valley, 400 guests, custom monogrammed napkins. Sarah's bump photos flooded Instagram with captions about new beginnings and real love. Her fiancé posted gym selfies captioned, "Ready for fatherhood." The Hargroves threw money at every detail like they could buy back the narrative. Then came the mandatory medical clearance for the international honeymoon, some obscure clause her fiancé's lawyers insisted on because he had his own prenup paranoia. Private clinic, fresh blood draw, same non-invasive prenatal paternity sequencing. When the results hit, Sarah was in the middle of her final dress fitting. The seamstress later told a gossip blogger that Sarah dropped to her knees on the platform, screaming so loud the mirrors rattled. "It's not possible! It's not possible!" she kept shouting. The numbers didn't lie. 99.9998%. My twins. My DNA. Her fiancé walked out without a word, left her standing there in white lace and panic. The venue called the confirmed cancellation, non-refundable six-figure deposit gone. Her brother tried to contain the story in the family chat, but screenshots spread like wildfire. Within 36 hours, half of Manhattan society knew the Hargroves had paid $5 million to bribe the actual father of Sarah's twins to disappear overseas. Paid him to vanish so their daughter could marry up without baggage. And now the groom was gone, the wedding was ashes, and the only man left holding legal paternity was the one they'd tried to erase. My new phone started vibrating at 3 a.m. local time. First, Sarah, voicemails that began with sobbing apologies and ended with begging. "Nathan, I panicked. I thought you'd never fight for us. Come back, please. They're yours." Then her mother, voice thin and shaking, offering another check, double, if I'd step up. Even her brother left a message that started with, "You smug bastard," and finished with, "We need to talk." I listened to every single one. Then I deleted them all. There were nights I sat on that terrace, glass of Vino Verde in hand, and felt the old reflex stir. Be the good guy, fix it, protect the family name even when it never protected me. I remembered Sarah's laugh in the early days, the way she used to trace circles on my back when I couldn't sleep. I wondered if I'd overcorrected, if silence was cruelty. But then I'd remember the check sliding across the table, the way her father said, "Someone like you," the way they all looked relieved when I signed, and the doubt would settle back into certainty. I didn't gloat, didn't post cryptic quotes, didn't need to. I simply stopped being their safety net, stopped absorbing the humiliation so they could stay comfortable. The quiet man they dismissed for 8 years had been carrying their secrets, their comfort, their entire illusion of control. When I walked away, I took all of it with me. Last month, a mutual friend sent me a photo from a charity gala. Sarah stood alone in a corner, no ring, no bump anymore. The twins born 3 weeks early by emergency C-section. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her parents flanked her like bodyguards, but their smiles were tight. No one approached them. The room had already moved on. I felt a pang, brief, sharp, human. Then I closed the photo and went back to watching the waves. I didn't destroy her life. I didn't need to. I just stopped shielding them from the weight of their own choices.
Turns out the man they thought was too small to matter had been the only thing keeping their house of cards standing.